Hi guys, γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're making the Greek New Year's bread known as vasilopita. There's a little coin baked into it, and whoever ends up with the slice with the coin in it is considered to be lucky for the next year. It's a fun tradition that we do every year, especially with the kids, and I like to have little goodie bags made for whoever gets it. It's a lot of fun. The bread is delicious. We are doing the bread version today, which is going to require yeast and a little bit more prep time. So keep that in mind if you're making this. If you want to make the cake version, hold on to the end and I'll put a little link for you guys. Let's get started. Okay, so step one of this recipe is getting the yeast ready. So in the bowl, we're going to put, carefully, 1¼ cups of warm milk. You want to make sure that the milk is warm, not hot, not cold. If it's hot, it'll kill the yeast. If it's cold, the bread won't rise. So you want it to be perfectly lukewarm. Then we're going to add a couple tablespoons, like 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, about a teaspoon of sugar, and a tablespoon of active dry yeast. And you just want to give that a little mix and let it hang out in here for about 10-15 minutes. You could even leave it in here for 30 minutes. Totally up to you. You don't want to skip this step, especially if you have yeast laying around in your fridge or in your pantry that you have not used in a while. Yeast does go bad. Every now and then it does go bad. And if you have a package or a container of yeast that's bad, all of your ingredients will go to waste because this won't rise and it just won't work. So don't skip this step. I'm just going to skip this step because I've used this yeast all week long and I know it's good. So now we're going to move on to the rest of the ingredients. So in my bowl over here, I have 4½ cups or 650 grams of all-purpose flour. You can use bread flour. It works better, but all-purpose flour does the trick. 1 cup of granulated sugar. Now, the characteristic flavorings of Greek tsoureki and vasilopita are mahlepi. You can get it at a Middle Eastern or Mediterranean grocery store. You could find it already ground, but I suggest you get the seeds. And I'll get the seeds out so I can show you what they look like because they're so much more aromatic. And then just grind them up in a coffee grinder or in a high-speed blender and it'll work. That's a heaping tablespoon. I love the smell of mahlepi. And then we need ½ teaspoon of mastic gum that's been finely ground. These are also little crystals that are sold in, again, Middle Eastern and Mediterranean grocery stores. In order to grind these, put them in a food processor with a little bit of sugar because it's very sticky. And once you start grinding it, it's just going to stick to your blender or your mortar and pestle. So always grind them with a little bit of sugar. And it's delicious. All you need is a little bit, ½ teaspoon. And let me show you these right now before I forget. So this is the mastic gum. I don't promote any particular brand. They're usually good, especially if you buy them in this version, which is how they come before you grind them. They're like little crystals. You could actually chew these. These are used as gum in Greece. It's natural gum. And they smell so good. It has like a pine aroma almost. And then this is mahlepi. In the Middle Eastern stores, it's known as mahlab. Hope I pronounced it right. And this is what they look like. They're also little kernels. I have to get that out of the way, otherwise I'd move on and I'd forget. Now, I have 2 oranges here. I'm going to use the zest because it just tastes so delicious, so festive. So I'm going to use the zest of these 2 oranges. If you prefer the taste of like a panettone, which is the Italian Christmas bread that I love, I could probably eat the whole thing if I have enough coffee around. You can get candied citrus peels. Or sometimes they have the combination of candy citrus peels with like other fruits in there, like cherries and pineapple. If you want to use that instead of this, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to need ½ teaspoon of salt. Go ahead and mix all of the dry ingredients together. That's that. Now we're going to need 5 whole eggs, and you also want those to be at room temperature. Nothing that goes in here should be cold. Otherwise, it's going to take forever for the dough to rise. So if you forgot to take the eggs out, go ahead and put them in a big bowl and put some warm water in there, not hot, right? You don't want to boil them. Some warm water, switch that water out a few times, and in 3-4 minutes, your eggs will be at room temperature. We're going to put those straight in there. 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. And now I'm just gonna add all the dry ingredients to this. Attach the dough hook, and this is going to knead for 15 minutes. Once the 15 minutes are up, this is not gonna look like a dough that you're used to seeing, especially if you're making bread, or even if you've made tsureki. Tsureki dough is more dense. This is gonna be very light and sticky. It's almost gonna look like a batter instead of a dough. Don't worry about it, you haven't done anything wrong. Once the 15 minutes are up, you're gonna take a 4-ounce stick of butter. 4 ounces is 113 grams. You wanna make sure that is also at room temperature, and you're gonna cut it into little pieces and knead it in here until it's all incorporated. The last thing that you need to add to this, if you like, you don't have to, is dried fruit. I like to add a combination of raisins and dried cranberries. If it was up to my husband, he'd probably fill it up with that. It'd probably be more raisins and cranberries and dried fruit than the dough, but we're gonna put about 1 cup or so. You could put as much as you want in there, and you could put whatever dry fruit combination that you like. And you wanna start off on slow speed or low speed, and then move up to like a medium speed, like a 6 or a 7 for 15 minutes. So once everything is mixed up well, you're just gonna wanna lightly grease a big bowl that's gonna hold this batter. It's gonna double in volume, so you wanna make sure you have a really nice and big bowl. Put a couple tablespoons of olive oil in there and just, grease it up. Transfer the batter into the bowl, cover it with plastic wrap, and set it aside in the warmest place of your house. I either like to use my dryer, and what I do is I just run the dryer with a few towels for about 10 minutes so it gets nice and hot. I put the bowl in there and I make sure to make sure you leave the dryer off. Or you could preheat your oven to 350 degrees and just sit it on top of your stove. It'll rise. It takes about 2 hours. You want this to rise and double in volume so the vasilopita will be really nice and light. I'll show you what it looks like as soon as it's there. Okay, so you want to take a 10-inch round cake pan and get one that's kind of deep. This is about 3 or 4 inches deep. Line it with parchment paper. So I have a sheet of parchment paper down here on the bottom, and I'll take there's a little bit of melted butter left over on this parchment wrapper that the butter was wrapped in, and I'm just going to grease the sides of the pan. You can also spray it with cake spray or pan spray. And this rose beautifully. Took exactly 2 hours. It depends on, the temperature in your house. It could take up to 3 hours. You don't want to skip this step, otherwise the vasilopita will not be light. Okay, now we're just going to transfer it into the pan, and I should have deflated it first. Make sure you deflate it at home. Just give it a nice mix with a spatula and it'll deflate. Don't just dump it in like I did. I don't know, sometimes I record videos and my brain stops working. It pretty much deflated, but you just don't want to get the pan dirty. And one more thing, take out a little bit of the batter. It looks like batter actually, it should be dough. And I'm just gonna put a little bit of flour over here just to kind of thicken it up a little bit. Might need a little more. Roll it in the flour because it's so sticky, it's super hard to work with. What we're gonna do with this, we're gonna cut this into 4 portions because we're just gonna make the numbers. Because vasilopita usually has the following year's, this is served New Year's Eve, and it usually has the upcoming year's date on top of it. It's either decorated or made with dough, like the vasilopita dough, or sometimes people get a stencil and then they sprinkle powdered sugar on top just to get the date on there. Sometimes people make it with almonds, sesame seeds. I don't have almonds or sesame seeds. I have black sesame seeds, and I feel like it's just gonna look burnt on here, so I'm not gonna use the sesame seeds. I'll just use some of this batter. So since it's going to be 2022, I'll just make 3 2s and a 0. And it might be a better idea to form them on the bread. So let's just transfer them on here. And you could do a better job of centering them than I did. Oh boy. Should be fine. Okay, and the most important thing of a vasilopita is the coin that's gonna go inside. You wanna take any coin and wrap it with aluminum foil. In Greek, this is known as the flouri. Put it in there, I guess, before you decorate the top. You could put it in anywhere. It's gonna rise, it won't even show. Cover it loosely with plastic wrap. and set it aside just to rise for a little bit, maybe for like 30 minutes. So if you haven't already preheated your oven, go ahead and preheat it to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. After 30 minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and brush the top of the vasilopita with egg wash. I just have 2 egg yolks with a little bit of milk. I'm just gonna whisk them together and brush the top. This is gonna help it get that beautiful mahogany color. And then I'm gonna bake it for about an hour. At the 45-minute mark, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna check it with a toothpick, insert it into the center. If it comes out clean, it's ready. My oven usually takes a whole hour. An hour, 60 minutes is what it takes for the vasilopita to cook, but keep an eye on yours because every oven bakes differently. Once it comes out, you wanna let it cool for a good 30, 40 minutes, I would say an hour, before you cut into it, and then it's gonna be time to serve. It smells amazing in here. I wish somebody can make a vasilopita scented, tsureki scented candle. I would pay money for that, for my house to smell like this all year round. It just smells so good. I can't wait. You want to make sure that it cools completely. I did cut into it a little early. It's still warm. If you ask me, it's the perfect temperature to put some butter on it and just make a cup of coffee and enjoy this thing. It smells amazing. It should be so soft. And the thing about this recipe is it's going to be cake-like. It's going to be a cake-like bread. It's not going to be like the tsureki that we all know and love that's kind of stringy and more bready. This is like a cakey brioche, if that makes sense. If you want it more like a tsureki texture, then you can just use my tsureki recipe, which is a much denser recipe, and then you just bake it until it's done, and you'll have that texture. But give this a try. It is so good. It took exactly 1 hour to bake. I cooled it for 30 minutes. I would definitely cool it for at least an hour, just so that way the steam kind of settles and everything is nice and moist and perfect. Like I said, make some coffee with this and you will be good to go. This is dessert as is. If you take a look, the 2022 that I put so much effort into making, it just kind of melted into the whole thing. You can't even see it. So honestly, don't even bother. If you want to make the 2022 or whatever year you're watching this in with almonds, that would be good, or sesame seeds. Or you know what, serve it as is. Nobody's really gonna look for it. You can dust some powdered sugar on top and put some nice festive decorations. You can do that. I know that they do sell lots of things for New Year's that you could decorate the top of this vasilopita with, but I'm like drooling over here. I cannot wait to give this a taste. And just look at how soft it is. Perfect. I'm gonna put a little smidge of butter on my piece. And you can see the specks of orange zest in here. Nothing better than sweet bread with butter. Incredibly delicious. You guys are gonna love this. Your guests are gonna love it. It's gonna be worth every second of effort that you're gonna put into it. If you wanna learn how to make the cake version of this, which is so simple, there's no need to rise or any of that stuff, comes together in like an hour, like bakes quickly, you just mix it all together and put it in the oven. Click over here and I'll see you right over there. Yes, us.